Well, hello there. Good afternoon. Welcome. It's a beautiful Wednesday here in the Chicago suburbs, and 65 on a early November day. I'll take it, especially if you're a candidate or a volunteer out knocking on doors today. It's surely a heck of a lot better uh, than being out and about when it's 25 degrees and rainy or snowy or some of the terrible things we've seen in early November here in recent elections. So, well, good afternoon. Welcome to our weekly live stream and podcast. I'm Patrick Pfingsten. I write the Illinoize political newsletter, and really appreciate you being here. If you don't get our weekly newsletter, you can sign up now at theillinoize.com, ILLINOIZE.com, where we put big newsletter out every week on Tuesday, as well as stuff each and every day, depending on whether you're a paid subscriber or you get the free stuff. So we'd love to have you. If you don't already join us, we hope you will subscribe and be a part of our community that's growing by the day. Coming up, we'll talk to Dan Petrella from the Chicago Tribune. He's been covering the J.B. Pritzker campaign and has been covering the governor for the last 4 years and had some interesting insights as to what the governor's thinking, what he's doing, what his plans for a second term may look like, and maybe why we haven't been hearing so much about those plans in the second term. And we'll begin this afternoon with a conversation with Kathy Salvi, who is the Republican nominee for United States Senate in the state of Illinois. We have invited incumbent Senator Tammy Duckworth to join us over the last few weeks and have not heard back from her camp yet. If she does want to do a sit down with us, we'll do a special live stream, special podcast for you, and make that happen before Election Day. So lots to get to as we're 6 days away and counting down until Election Day. So let's get to it, shall we? We are pleased now to be joined by Kathy Salvi. She's the Republican candidate for United States Senate. For the record, we've invited Tammy Duckworth to join us. She has yet to take us up on that offer, and we're, 6 days from Election Day, so time's running out if she wants to, but we're here if she does. So, Kathy, thank you first for the time. We've seen polling from my poll in late August to the WGN poll last week that this race seems to be closing. Is that what you're seeing?
Sure, and I'm seeing it when I go door to door on the train platforms and at the early polling places as well. Real Clear Politics has upgraded this race and it's in play. And I expect we have the momentum. I expect to be elected with the good work of the fine people of Illinois. And my message is what resonates with people. If you're concerned about the direction of the economy, what it costs for gas, what it costs for food, and your utility bills, then Salvi's the answer. If you're concerned about the uptick in crime we've had, particularly over the last few years, then the answer is Salvi. I received the unanimous endorsement of the Illinois Fraternal Order of Police and every endorsing police agency, the Italian-American, Polish-American Police, and recently the Chicago Sergeants Association have all gotten behind me. And why? Because Tammy Duckworth is soft on crime. There's no bill that has ever come before her to support the police that she's supported. In fact, she endorsed Mayor Lori Lightfoot for mayor of City of Chicago, said she was doing a good job after Lightfoot gutted the Chicago Police Department, $52 million. In addition to that, she thinks that the Safety Act is okay and should be made federal law. Well, that's absolutely wrong for Illinois, it's wrong for Chicago, and it's certainly wrong for America. So her vote is 100% in line with Joe Biden, and I think this election will be a referendum on the Biden failed agenda. So this is why I believe I'll be elected.
To be fair, I don't think I've heard her say that ending cash bail should be made nationwide. And if she has, feel free to have your staff send me that. But
if you look at here, I've got the entire bill here right now. I'll show you. I've spoken enough on the safety bill. I have it here in all 700 plus pages. It's a convoluted, confusing bill. And I'm actually using it as a prop right now. It's a mess. It's a nightmare. Listen, I'm a former assistant public defender, and I think that it's bad law. It's bad policy. It'll open up the jails. It will victims of crimes will be in the hospital longer than those who committed them. It's just a bad piece of legislation. And when I examined Tammy Duckworth's vote record, for instance, she voted against funding for prosecutors to keep violent criminals behind bars prior to trial. And so that is a vote to defund law enforcement, to allow people who committed crimes to be let out into the community. And I just think that that is bad policy. So insofar as what the Safety Act will do, it's a state law, will go into effect in January. Expect that many of the jails across the state of Illinois will be emptied out from, several crimes that are not listed as detainable offenses. And I think that this is just bad policy all along. And we're feeling the effects of it already in Cook County because the terms of the Safety Act have already been implemented and put into law by or put into practice by Kim Foxx and Lori Lightfoot. So I think that that's just another reason to vote for me for United States Senate. So in 3 words, why vote for Salvi for U.S. Senate? Economy, crime, and education.
And obviously we can have I'm sure we could have a long conversation about cash bail and that sort of thing, but that's not on the table today because that's not a federal issue. So I do want to talk about,
and that's only one of the things that the 700 plus Safety Act covers. So.
Sure. On the issue of, the financial disadvantage that you have in this campaign, Tammy Duckworth has been on broadcast TV for weeks. You guys have not been running TV ads. I don't have to tell you that the sign of a close race is one that's, just look at the airwaves in Pennsylvania and Ohio and Nevada and Arizona and see how those races that are kind of listed as tier 1. Do you feel like you're at a disadvantage because of the financial challenges your campaign has had?
Not at all. In fact, my message is the same as many of the other fine candidates in those states. And look at how much money they're pouring into it. For me to be within single digits of Tammy Duckworth at this point is a very positive sign for democracy and for our country. Listen, my message resonates with all people of goodwill. Republican, Democrat, independents, open-minded Democrats are coming on board. Maybe they don't admit it, but they're whispering loud enough to those who know them to say, vote for Salvi. She's the change we need. And why? Because Tammy Duckworth has been pretty much absent in 6 years. Even Marianne Ahern said, what has she done? She couldn't think of one thing she's done in 6 years. And we're feeling that. She's pretty much a Washington insider. She answers to the far left of her party, which is not Illinois. And my message is right down the pipe. I'm a committed attorney. I run a small business over 3 decades. I know what it's like to make a payroll. I'm a wife. I'm a mom. I'm a 5th generation Illinoisan, and I love Illinois. And I want to see people stop leaving Illinois, businesses. I would love to give them incentives to stay here. And one recent example of this was just the recent bid, 40 states bid to receive the Intel project on the CHIPS Act, and Ohio received the bid. Well, Illinois didn't even compete for it because it's hard to make a case that Illinois is a business-friendly place. And if we don't have good paying jobs here, then we can't sustain our families. And families and our young will go to other states. So I believe that we can do a lot better. And the fact that we're the highest tax state in the nation, we're one of the most highly over-regulated states. We have a very uptick in crime is demonstrable, and you could feel it. Ask anybody, do you feel safer in the last 2 years? And the answer is resoundingly no. And that's because of the bad policies and votes that Tammy Duckworth has taken. So sure, she's spent a lot of her money that she's received from special interests on the airwaves, but all around the state, what I hear is, boy, I haven't seen her for 6 years. I've seen her more in the last 2 months than I've seen her the last 6 years. And we're feeling it here in Illinois. And that's why I'm running. So if anybody cares about the direction of the economy, about the uptick in crime and putting a lid on that and supporting our law enforcement, And then parents who deserve to be in the driver's seat of our kids' education. And that really, really hits home with me as a mom and a grandma. Then you have to vote for Salvi.
The big issue out there, and obviously Democrats have tried to make this the centerpiece of their campaigns across the country, is that of abortion. And you've been I think it's safe to say a strong voice in the pro-life community over the years. What is your position? And be straight with me, because I think there were some people who thought you may have been dodging some of these issues in your WTTW debate. Be straight with me. What should the federal government be doing now based on the Dobbs decision?
The Dobbs decision put abortion into the hands of elected representatives in each state, and I think that was appropriate. You see, I am against judicial activism. We shouldn't have our judges making law on any issue that's outside the framework of the Constitution. And I believe that the judiciary, as well as the Congress, as well as the president, should stay in their lane. And each one of the branches of government should be a check and balance on the other. And as to abortion, there's only one person who's extreme on abortion, and that's Tammy Duckworth. She voted for and wants the law of the land to be up to 9-month elective abortion, taxpayer funded. And this is absolutely unconscionable. And it's against the mainstream of not only Illinois voters, but also the nation. And so I think that she should be held to account. And if you remember that debate, I asked her a question. I asked her, would you vote for any protection for the 9-month fetus? And she looked at me like I had 4 eyes, and she couldn't answer it. And I said, I'll take that as a no.
So should I take this then? If you think it's an issue for the states, are you a no on Lindsey Graham's 15-week bill?
I've just said, I think it's in the hands of the state's elected officials, where it should be, the elected representatives. And I think that was an appropriate
decision. That's not a yes or no.
I think it is a yes. It's in the hands of the state. And as for the Lindsey Graham bill, it would not have been a bill that I sponsored.
In terms of inflation, I think that I went to the grocery store this weekend, and, I came back and said to my wife, it's like, boy, you can really feel it now, maybe even more than you could in the last couple of months. And obviously gas prices are ticking back up a little bit. What should Congress, what should the federal government be doing to combat inflation? Specifically because, Jerome Powell has said that the Fed is going to essentially just keep kicking interest rates up until it throws us into a recession if nobody does anything about it. So, and nobody wants that. So what should Congress be doing to stem the tide on the inflation issue?
Joe Biden has been writing into law from the Oval Office policies which are reserved for Congress, and Congress has been a do-nothing Congress under the same party with Joe Biden. So the reason why I need to be elected is to hold Joe Biden accountable for the reckless decisions he's making and legislating from his desk in the Oval Office. Among them is when he wrote into law, or wrote with his pen, the shutdown of the Keystone Pipeline, limited drilling of oil on federal lands, stopped the liquefied natural gas that we have an abundant reserve in our country from being exported. He imperiled and made us energy dependent. This was a tragic consequence of his presidency, and we've been feeling the pain ever since. We need to restore energy independence, because energy drives our economy. Energy, look at your gas bill and your electric bill. That's energy. And we're all hurting because the way goods get to market is through the transportation system. And so one of the first orders of business is to put a check on Joe Biden and bring back policies. And I believe an all of the above energy program is what we need. We can't and don't have an economy that can rely only on renewable sources. 12 to 15% of our economy is driven by renewables. We need to have an all of the above energy program. And the Congress has not done anything to change the executive orders that Joe Biden has signed. And this is a
one of the things that I think the ag community would tell you, and full disclosure, I worked on these issues when I lived in Indiana for 5 years, and in recent years, would be Duckworth's support of biofuels, biodiesel, corn-based ethanol, etc. Are you on board with farmers in this state who are looking for markets for things like ethanol and biodiesel?
I've spoken to the Farm Bureau, and I was in a forum with Tammy Duckworth, and I said at this outset, why accept crumbs from the Democrat table when you could get a 4-course meal from Salvi? Nobody is hurt more by energy prices being what they are than the farmer. And nobody knows better how to run their farm than the farmer. The men and women who farm are 1/4 of our economy here in Illinois. And it has just been tragic to see the policies that have been imposed on them. I had a farmer in Logan County say that he has paid an unbudgeted $25,000 on diesel fuel, and diesel fuel is in short supply. What we need to do is have an all of the above energy program, which would allow drilling for oil, clean coal, liquefied natural gas, and more nuclear, take an arsenal or nuclear power. 2 years ago, we were a 40% nuclear energy exporter. Now we are a nuclear energy importer. And no more have we seen the cost of food and the prices than the oppression that we place on our farmers. Tammy Duckworth and I could not disagree more on this. While I will do everything to bring biofuels and continue to support renewables, we can't rely on them in our economy at this time. We have imperiled ourselves in our domestic economy and also in our international relations because of our absolutely insane energy policy. And I plan to make a difference in this. And Tammy Duckworth, she's 100% vote of Joe Biden. She has done nothing, said nothing in order to change this. And I think that is poor leadership for Illinois.
I think all of the above would imply support for expanding wind and solar too.
Absolutely.
And I think that there are people who feel like the left may be trying to move to making those primary when maybe we don't have the infrastructure for that yet. How should the federal government incentivize the growth of wind and solar? Because I don't think there's anyone that thinks cleaner, greener energy is a bad idea. It's just got to be cost effective, right?
Well, I'd like to speak to a little bit. We are the Saudi Arabia of liquefied natural gas. Europe was accepting our liquefied natural gas as a primary source of their energy in the prior administration. But Joe Biden stopped this with the signing of his pen, and he opened up the North State 2 pipeline, which is Russian oil to Europe. What do you think it is that's filling up the coffers of Russia? But it's the sale of their oil to Europe. And you could see how this all ties in. It's just bad policy. And Tammy Duckworth was right in line with that decision. Her votes and every single point have been in line with Joe Biden. And while Joe Biden can't be unelected in this election cycle, Tammy Duckworth can. And that's why I believe I'll be elected this November 8th.
You mentioned Russia. Obviously, their presence in Ukraine, if it isn't concerning, it should be.
Yes.
And obviously the resolve of the Ukrainian people has been inspirational, if not impressive. Clearly, the oil issue is one that is notable, especially because European countries aren't willing to deal with any of the pain from shutting off that Russian oil. But specifically in terms of what sort of support the United States should be giving the Ukrainians. There's been a movement among Republicans, whether it's those already in office or those running for office, that there should no longer be support for Ukraine in their war against Russia. Where do you stand?
I am squarely with the Ukrainian people, and there's no other acceptable answer to that question other than Ukrainian victory. And I will tell you what's happened. Think about our foreign policy. The biggest blunder in my lifetime, I think, was the failed Afghanistan withdrawal. Every one of us watched that in August of 2021. It was heart-wrenching. After 20 years of working towards securing a free and open society in Afghanistan, that blundered, botched withdrawal imperiled us. And it sent a message to our enemies that we are weak and have no resolve, and to our allies that we cannot be trusted and counted on. That is the landmark tell of the Biden administration. It set the stage for his presidency. And what has that caused? Think about November of 2021, when the Russians were amassing troops on the Ukrainian border. You could see what was about to happen. What did we do? Nothing. No heavy sanctions. No discussions. No diplomacy. It's crickets. And Tammy Duckworth sits on the Armed Service Committee, and there was nothing from Tammy Duckworth. And then what happened in January? Biden signaled to Russia that a minor incursion into the Ukraine would be okay. Well, that was reckless. And yet then what happened in February? The invasion. We have been leading weakly and behind. There's no resolve from this president, and there's mixed messaging. So what do we see? Unprincipled leadership from the United States, weakness from the United States. And ever since that invasion, Biden has been leading from behind. I support and would have voted for the $40 billion monies to help the Ukrainians fight to secure their freedom. That was appropriate. But we have no oversight on those monies. And we don't even know that they're directed to the correct purpose. And I would say before any additional monies, I would want to see that oversight. I would want to know that it's helping. And this is another thing the Biden administration did. They blocked fighter jets from our allied nations in Europe from going to the Ukraine. So while Biden, while we give the money, and we should be giving the money to help the Ukrainian people fight this war and the Russian aggression, we need to back the freedom fighters. We also have to allow them to have the ATACMS missile system and the fighter jets. We shouldn't be blocking the assistance that NATO nations want to give the Ukraine in their freedom fight. So I believe that this administration has stalemated the success of the Ukrainian, and they're dragging this war out. What we need is an America that is resolved to end this war with Ukraine winning and defeating Russia. And I think right now the policy is one of let's fight until the last Ukrainian is down. I mean, this is tragic, and we need a strong America. And Biden has not delivered that type of leadership.
Kathy, before we let you go, I think I've been pretty clear about why I broke away from the Republican Party and the effect of Trumpism and what it meant.
You did break away, Patrick. That's surprising.
Well, I've said this publicly. I'll say it again, that after working a congressional primary in 2020 and seeing the way that the party had moved, that that's why I stepped away from working in politics. I
want to give you a reason to come back. I want you to vote for me, Patrick.
I'm here to tell the truth, no matter the party. But I think we need to talk about the effect of Trumpism on the Republican Party. This state is a clear dynamic that you have. Obviously, a liberal part of the state. You have a moderate, suburban part of the state, and obviously there's the downstate, heavily Trump-supported part of this. How does the Republican Party, with the way that politics are fractured, with the way that so many conventional Republicans have made their political futures all about what Donald Trump wants, how do you balance those things with, one, trying to appeal to moderates in the state, and two, trying to effectively navigate doing anything in the Senate as a Republican if you were to win?
I'll go to an event in the morning and somebody will ask me, Kathy, where do you stand on Trump? Because if you're with him, I can't vote for you. And later in the day, I'll go to an event and somebody said, Kathy, where do you stand on Trump? Unless you're with them, I can't support you. So I say the same thing to everybody. I say, well, we could all agree that the departure of many of the policies from the prior administration have been a train wreck for America, and especially here in Illinois. We've got record inflation, high gas prices, well above the national average. We've got people can't even afford to budget their groceries or pay their utility bills. And look at the property taxes. We're the #1 highest tax state in the nation. And then you want to talk about crime? You talk about the defund the police movement? I said, and how about schools? 70% of our third graders can't even perform at a reading level or math level. We have a crisis in education. And so a departure from many of the policies have hurt us here in Illinois. So send my brand of leadership to the United States Senate. And then they push back sometime. And I say, listen, President Trump fills his shoes pretty well. And send my brand of leadership, because all people, Republican, Democrat, the reason why people are so apathetic is they feel as though they're not listened to. We've had it up to here. I've had it up to here with the rancor. Tammy Duckworth never votes for everything. I shouldn't say never, rarely votes for something that has an R next to it. Well, that's no leadership. We've got 2 Democrat senators in the United States Senate. And I think it'll do a little good to have a common sense conservative Republican out there, somebody who's going to ask the right question and make sure that Illinois is well represented, because certainly a balanced Congress, a balanced Senate will help us here in Illinois. We'll be able to drive and keep business that we have instead of businesses fleeing to other pastures. And so I think my brand of leadership is exactly what we need. Listen, Patrick, I've only been on the ballot 8 months, but I am going to lead as I have lived. I'm a 5th generation Illinoisan. I love Illinois. I'm a common sense conservative. And that's why I have a united Republican Party behind me. You'd be surprised maybe, but no, I've got people who are pro-Trump, anti-Trump, and anywhere in between who are supporting my candidacy. In addition to that, independent voters are breaking my way as well, because they want somebody who is not a divider and not divisive and a name caller, but somebody who will call people out on bad votes. And that's what I'm doing in my campaign. And it's resonating. People are hearing. Also, I'm positive. I'm not one of these people who's going to slap something out there and be negative. No, let's stick to the issue. The reason Tammy Duckworth is negative is because she's trying to run away from her record. Her record, to force vax mandates or mask mandates, or her position on the border. She has rarely voted. I don't know. Her vote on the border, securing the border, is reprehensible. And we have a fluid border with fentanyl coming across and killing our children, and human trafficking. You know, in my professional life, I've helped 2 women escape human trafficking, one from Congo and one from Russia. So I know this and see it in my practice as an attorney. And what I plan to do is apply the same common sense I have through my entire professional career. And that is, if you get good information in, you'll have better results out. So I'm definitely a voice that we desperately need here in Illinois. And that's why even open-minded Democrats, hopefully you, Patrick, are going to vote for me this November 8th.
Well, I'm not a Democrat either. To be clear, I'm just me. But
you're an independent. You want to be the person, and I am the person who can turn our great state and put it on the right path.
Kathy Salvi, Republican candidate for United States Senate. Kathy, thanks so much for the time. We really appreciate it. And I think we're going to talk on the radio later this week too. So I'm looking forward to doing it twice.
Can I plug my website?
Please do.
Okay, it's kathysalvi.com. You could learn anything you want to know about me on that website. And I also have ways to contact me. So I appreciate being on your show today. And I'm going to ask everyone listening for their vote November 8th.
Good luck over the final 6 days. Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you.
Great political report. All right, we're joined now by Dan Petrella from the Chicago Tribune, great political reporter there. He's been covering J.B. Pritzker throughout the campaign and the governor's race. Dan wrote a really great long piece in the Tribune last weekend. If you haven't seen it yet, go check it out on J.B. Pritzker, on his campaign thus far. Dan, how would you best describe the campaign that the governor has run in this general election so far?
Yeah, I think what struck me is that it's been a very sort of backward-looking campaign, a very safe campaign, talking about accomplishments in his first term, and not so much, the big picture, think big kind of stuff that he was proposing as a new candidate. And some of that, is just the what happens when you're running as an incumbent versus when you're running as a challenger. But I think it's also an indication that he's taking a really safe approach, not wanting to take too many risks or give Darren Bailey or other opponents new things to try to pick apart, but really focus on his messaging and his honestly fairly lengthy list of achievements from his 4 years so far.
When he first announced that he was running for re-election, in those kind of interviews he did in the first couple of days afterward, he talked about things like free college, free preschool, free childcare, those sort of things, universal preschool. But we haven't heard anything about that essentially since then. Are these second term agenda things from Pritzker, or are these kind of that he doesn't specifically want to talk about right now, or aren't polling well, or where has that gone?
He does still bring up some of those things. For example, I sat down with him for about half an hour in his campaign office in the Loop for the story. And he did bring up, for example, the idea of making college tuition free at public universities and colleges for students who are below the median income. But that hasn't been something that he's been talking about on the campaign trail really at all. He's obviously somebody who has been involved in early childhood issues for a long time, even well before he became governor. And that's an issue that's near and dear to his heart. But he also hasn't made that a cornerstone of his campaign. I would not be surprised if he's reelected in January or February when he delivers the State of the State and budget speeches, if he puts those kind of items out there on the table. But he hasn't really had a forward-looking, here's what I want to do if you give me 4 more years, other than we're going to keep balancing the budget so we can do things we want to do.
As we see this race close a little bit, I mean, my poll in August had it about 20, and now the WGN poll last week had it about 9. So I think it's safe to say that it's closing. He kind of admitted as much in his speech the other day when I saw him in Des Plaines. Are he and his team regretting putting so much money into nominating Bailey in the primary, or do they think that it may be a worse situation if it were maybe a more moderate Republican?
No, at least publicly, they're not regretting that decision. I think that they would still believe that Bailey was, among the easier of the candidates in the field for him to go up against. If you look at the regional breakdown, even in the most recent WGN poll that had things pretty close, Pritzker is still leading by a pretty healthy margin in the suburbs where things are likely to be, largely decided. I think, there is potential if it had been somebody, more toward the middle, like Richard Irvin, for example, it could be a tighter race than it is now. Obviously, there's all sorts of different dynamics at play, and so you just never know how things might play out.
And a gazillion dollars from Ken Griffin that would have come with it probably don't hurt. Let me ask about downstate specifically, because I think, the numbers have shown that he's doing okay downstate, maybe better than I would have expected. Even though I live in the suburbs now, I'm a downstater, so I still lots of friends and family down there, and there is a palpable anger about the governor downstate. Whether it's over the mask mandates or the COVID restrictions or the school closures or business and restaurant shutdowns, et cetera. How does the governor view his perception downstate? I mean, obviously he's a billionaire guy from the Gold Coast. So he's, it's not his world. Does he recognize that he has issues downstate? Does he care that he has issues downstate?
I think he does. I mean, talking to people close to him and just having covered him for 4 years now, you get the sense that he is someone, despite his enormous wealth, and that he's somebody who wants people to like him. He's an affable sort of person. I think what he really tries to do when he goes downstate, particularly, to Southern Illinois, is just talk about the money that his administration and the General Assembly have invested in infrastructure in Southern Illinois. I followed him around on his bus tour through Central and Southern Illinois for a couple of days back in August, and there was hardly a stretch of interstate highway in 2 days that I was following the bus that didn't have some sort of major construction project going on. He talks about things like the Walker's Bluff Casino in Williamson County, the money that the state is putting into reopening the Red Lake Resort in Southern Illinois, the Cairo Port project. So he really tries to, I guess maybe not set aside completely, but downplay sort of the more divisive social issues where people maybe don't align with him in Southern Illinois, and talk about the things that he argues that his administration is doing to try and improve the quality of life for residents of that part of the state.
The abortion issue has been core to his reelection campaign, which obviously was designed as a way to excite the Democratic base, get them to turn out. But I've had more than one pollster tell me over the last few weeks that moderates, independents, those breaking toward the end here are not abortion motivated. Abortion's maybe the third or fourth issue on their list. Is there any sort of looking back and saying maybe we should have been playing more to the middle?
I think their hope is still that the issue will activate people who, are more inclined to vote for Democrats, but maybe don't turn out for every election. I think that, you still see, I think it feels like every day I see the governor's campaign Twitter account bring up the issue of abortion, and that, Illinois will defend women's rights. I don't think that they're running away from that issue. I do think that they probably have spent a lot more time in the past couple of months talking about crime and the Safety Act than they would have liked. That issue really has sucked up so much oxygen in the race, but also, if the most recent WGN poll is to be believed, also isn't top of
crime isn't the top of the issue.
Yeah. And so the economy, again, polls high for people, but there's very limited ability for the governor of a state to do anything about the economy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But before we let you go, Dan, you mentioned the Safety Act, I kind of pressed him after the WGN debate a couple of weeks ago. I think you were there, that, what specifically does he support changing in that law? And there are Republican and Democrat states attorneys that are saying, we just need clarification on what a judge can do, essentially, which I don't think is a stretch for someone to say. So what's his reticence to step up and say, I support ending cash bail, but I want a judge to have more clarity. I want more clarity in the law as to what a judge can or can't do. What's the reticence in saying that?
It's hard to say. He has finally come around and said something pretty close to that, but it took many different reporters,
weeks, months,
the question, over the course of, like you said, at least a couple weeks to get him pinned down on that. I think ending cash bail was a priority for him coming into his second year in 2020. That got subsumed by the pandemic. I remember being at an event in January of 2020 where he was laying out his criminal justice reform agenda, and that was like the top item. So it's an issue near and dear to him, and I think he just doesn't want to use a horrible metaphor, throw the baby out with the bathwater because of this political backlash.
And finally, the presidential thing. I mean, obviously, the governor's still the favorite to win next week. I think it's safe to say it's looking less and less like Joe Biden's going to be a candidate in 2024. The governor's chief of staff is a high-level Democratic operative nationally. How serious should we be taking the possibility of the governor running for president in 2024?
I think if Biden is running, there's no chance. He's talked to several people about this, and somebody pointed out, when he first ran for Congress in 1998, he didn't do what Edwin Eisendrath did and try to primary Sidney Yates. He waited till Sidney Yates was retiring to try and run for the seat. I think that if Biden doesn't run, there's a fairly decent chance we'll see somebody like Pritzker, who has the resources. David Axelrod pointed this out when I talked to him. He can make himself known in many places that he isn't already very quickly, because he has billions of dollars to spend running national TV commercials if he wants to get into a Democratic presidential primary, which is why his carefully crafted answer has left himself room to
A little bit of wiggle room.
Do that if Biden decides not to run.
Dan Petrella from the Chicago Tribune. Dan, thanks so much for the time. Good luck over the next 6 days, and hopefully we can all get a nap afterward.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Dan. All right, that was Dan Petrella from the Chicago Tribune. Thanks for his time. Thanks to Kathy Salvi for joining us. We appreciate the conversations with them. I am not going to stick around long this afternoon. Just a couple of quick hits for you. There's a story out this afternoon. A Chicago man has been charged with allegedly sending Republican gubernatorial candidate Darren Bailey a voicemail threatening to mutilate and kill him. 21-year-old Scott Lennox of Chicago was charged with 1 felony count each of threatening a public official, telephone harassment, and harassment by electronic communications, according to the Cook County State's Attorney's Office. According to the police report, Lennox left Bailey a voicemail at 10:27 p.m. October 28th, in which he threatened to mutilate and kill him. State police learned Lennox used his cell phone to make the threats against Bailey. Police said Lennox admitted making the threats. He was arrested Monday night at his home in Chicago, and he is scheduled for a bond hearing in Cook County later on today. Both the governor and the House Speaker have come out and condemned the actions and the threats made against Senator Bailey. And I'm filling in on a radio show in Springfield this week on WMAY, and I talked yesterday about the attack on Paul Pelosi and the speaker's husband, with the attacker reportedly shouting, "Where's Nancy?" In an effort to hurt or kill her. We obviously saw January 6th and people who wanted to hang Mike Pence, and there was obviously the 2017 congressional baseball game shooting, where a man shot at congressional Republicans, almost killed Steve Scalise, shot at Rodney Davis, one of our members of Congress. It's just it's a reminder that we all need to tone down the rhetoric a little bit. There is no politician, Republican or Democrat, no matter how much you like or dislike them, that deserves threats or actions of violence. And it isn't party specific. Clearly, both parties are ramping up rhetoric, are ramping up anger, and it's kind of up to us, those of us that are engaged and paying attention, to tone down the rhetoric, to remember that these people, even though you support or oppose them in an election, are still humans, and we can all do a little better. Well, this is likely our last visit before Election Day. So obviously, please go vote, do your homework, make sure you know what you're doing when you walk into the polling place, whether you vote early, vote by mail, or vote on Election Day. And we will hopefully be back next Wednesday, the day after the election. If I've actually slept at any point since then, I'll be on WGN TV Tuesday night. We'll have a big newsletter Wednesday morning for everyone, and we'll be back here at noon next Wednesday. So thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time, your support, and for taking the time to watch or listen. And we'll talk to you again soon. Have a great day.